What's up, everyone? It's Vin here from the Diamond Geezers, your gang green geezer. Coming to you here, what we're going to talk about today is briefly cover the results of the Jets-Pats game, talk about the news and notes so far this week, and do a preview of the upcoming game with the Jets and Ravens this week. Going through the game, it was a Thursday night game. Everybody's already heard a lot of the postmortem of the game. Started out with a very strong drive, but everybody knows, very run heavy. A couple of decent passes by Fields, but it was predominantly run heavy. They get the touchdown. Uh, Patriots come right back, similarly long drive, but more balanced. Tied the game up, and you could see as the game was going on, if the Jets just had better quarterback play, which we'll get to in a little bit, this game was there to be won, or at least to be even closer than the final. The game was closer than this final score. They just were getting no competent quarterback play. And what you see teams doing, especially the better teams who are coached well and have the personnel like a team like the Patriots has, is if they know you're not going to be able to stretch the field, you don't throw guys open. They have to turn and you have to see them open before you're going to throw that ball. Then they just pack the box on you. So even that's why the screen passes, these bubble screens, that's why when you look to say, why can't every other team run a screenplay, run these bubble screens, the jet sweeps? Because they have, most of those teams, if you watch, they'll have at the very least competent quarterback play or better. For this, when you don't have that, when your quarterback is simply just not a threat passing the ball, everybody's coming closer to the line of scrimmage. So when you're throwing these screens, and you could see, especially sometimes the defensive line doesn't read it, but the secondary does, the linebackers do. They're seeing that. And if they're already close to the line of scrimmage because you're not a threat in the passing game, then they're just jumping these plays. So the reason if you want to look at the Breece Hall screen against Cleveland, why did that work? It was zero blitz. So they sent everybody at you. And if you see that play, you watch that replay, if Fields doesn't get rid of the ball exactly when he does, he's going to get blasted, potentially, definitely sacked, maybe even sack fumbled. When he gets it away, he gets it into Breece's hands because it's a zero blitz, and the Jets now have their blockers out there. If it took one or two blocks, and he's going to get sprung because there's nobody there. Everybody else is out. There's nobody there to protect. So, which is what happened. But most times, you're not going to get zero blitzed. So when everybody's just packed up there because nobody has to worry about anybody going more than 15, 20 yards down the field, if that, then they just jump those plays. So something that might get maybe a decent play or potentially a big play, you're getting stuffed, and it looks like you can't do anything. And that's what it looked like with this Jet team with Fields. They went up against a better team. We know that Patriot team was bad last year, or at least a bad record. Brought in Vrabel, but what does it look like they have? Looks like they found their quarterback. So, and he wasn't outstanding. He didn't do anything fantastic. He just did and took what the defense gave him, chopped up the Jets where he had to, and they won the game. Let's say handily, but if the Jets, again, if they had better quarterback play, just looking at some of my notes here, they were a little bit they've been a little bit sloppy with the penalties over the last couple of weeks. So that's something that they have to clean up a little. Nothing crazy. It's not like it was earlier in the season, especially Brownlee. Brownlee over the last couple of weeks been a little handsy, a little grabby. I know he's been playing more on the outside now, especially with the dealing of Sauce Gardner and then AZ Thomas getting hurt. So he's now maybe playing a little bit in a little bit of an unfamiliar role, but he's a little bit handsy, a little bit grabby. They got to clean that up. So now that basically not surprising. The loss wasn't surprising, but the I'm glad you saw the effort. You continue to see the effort from this team. They didn't give up. They didn't give. They're not giving in. They're not mailing it in. People are talking about draft position, and we'll talk about that in a little while as well. Um, I think based on what I'm seeing in the record wise doesn't tell you anything at this point. This team, especially, is going to tear it down to the studs. It looks like, for the most part, you just traded away, two of your best defensive players, cornerstones of your team for first round picks. So you're tearing it down. So let's see. And of course, Quinton Williams yesterday gets a sack and a half, which is a half sack more than he had all season for the Jets. And I believe he had 5 QB pressures in the game, which is more than he's had in any game in his career. So is that? I mean, he was off for 2 weeks because he had the Jet bye and he had the Cowboys bye, and it's also a horrendous Raiders offense. Yeah, it could be just all the perfect storm and all those things coming together. We'll see as the season goes on whether he's just juiced from the trade, if they're just doing something different with him. But we expected it. But look, this Jet team is just going in a different direction. Quinton's also going to likely want a new contract, maybe after this season, maybe even after next. Again, as I mentioned in an earlier podcast, it's the timing where this Jet franchise sees the team being and where they see these players being at that point in time. Quinton maybe, again, looking for that second big contract. He'd be at that time 30 years old. Maybe they feel the timeline just wasn't matching with where they see the team's growth timeline. The Sauce deal was, again, it was a Godfather deal, too good to pass up. And he didn't look fantastic in his first game. Typical dropped a touchdown, dropped a interception. Excuse me, gave up the touchdown to London. So it's not like he was fantastic, but he's been solid, which is what he's been the last couple of years. Solid, but not spectacular. Well, we'll see how this all plays out in due time. We're not going to figure it out by the end of this season. The Jets have picks from those deals in 26 and 27. You won't know till then how this deal shakes out. But then we go to the news of the week. Fields is out. Taylor is in. A lot of people were signaling, does this mean the Jets are tanking? Actually, it's quite the opposite. The Jets are looking to say, if you're trying to, because right now you're in evaluation mode. Let's just call it what it is, people. We are in evaluation mode. You're not in playoff chase. You're in evaluation mode. You're trying to win games, but you're also trying to evaluate the players around you, especially on offense. You traded for A.D. Mitchell. Didn't look great in his first game. A lot of drops, but he hasn't played in a bit. This is also his first game with a new team, so I'll give him a mulligan for at least this game. You got Mechie, you got Brees, of course. You have to evaluate who's going to be part of your plans for 2026 and moving forward. Do you have are Mechie and A.D. Mitchell going to be your 3 and 4 receivers? Can they be that? So where now you need to get a running partner for Garrett Wilson, and which is something you might do in this year's draft. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Won't get into too much draft talk today, but unfortunately that's where the Jets are, and we will usually find ourselves at this time of year with this team is already looking at draft position and tankathon and all that stuff. But this was a move that I've been listening to a lot of different of the talking heads saying, oh, this should have been made weeks ago. Well, he wanted to make it weeks ago. It likely would have been made weeks ago, but Taylor was injured. Let's not forget he had the knee injury, which is why Fields started the game where the Jets get their first win against the Bengals. And on the short week, a lot of people figured they wouldn't. And then I'm sorry, then they get the win against the Browns, and a lot of people figured on the short week they wouldn't take him out because it's a short week, so they wouldn't make the switch. Then they'll give Taylor the extra almost 2 weeks to prepare with the starters for the upcoming game against Baltimore. Okay, yeah, he was going to make the move. A lot of people, oh, he would have showed me something if he made it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Well, he was going to. Oh, he would have showed me something if he made it after a victory. Why does he got to show you something? I don't understand that. So because you wanted it made at a certain time and he didn't make it when you wanted it to be made, that means he somehow speaks to his competence? Bullshit. He's making the moves. This is a first year head coach, and he's making the moves in the time frame that he feels they need to be made for the betterment of this team. He would have made the move a few weeks ago. So I hate when they say that. Oh, it would have been better if he made it after a win. He would have showed me something. But he was going to make it before. He was going to make it. He was going to make the move. But because Taylor was injured, his knee, he couldn't make it. So maybe Taylor, as far as we know, maybe he wasn't healthy enough to step in and start. Even though I know he was warming up in the New England game. But we already talked about that on the short week, it wasn't likely that Glenn was going to make the move and make the change. So now Fields is out, Taylor's in. He's not a savior, but he's excuse me, he's a far superior quarterback to Justin Fields. We know what Justin Fields is. He was a lot. They took a shot, they missed. Chicago took the shot and missed. Pittsburgh took the shot and missed. We took the shot and missed. As far as I'm concerned, for Fields, 3 strikes, you're out. He'll likely just be a career backup, wind up going to a team potentially like Baltimore or maybe Philadelphia or somewhere where they have dual threat quarterbacks where he can be a backup, and if he has to get in the game, he can run similar plays to what their starting quarterbacks run. But his run is done here, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen that they named who the backup is for this Sunday, but if I'm the Jets, it should be Brady Cook. Field should never see the field again for the Jets. You saw enough. This is not a first-year guy. It's not someone you drafted. There is a lot of tape on this man, and none of it is good. So, yes, I know people are saying, well, he's always looked bad, but not this bad. Okay, so the level of suckiness, is where what we're gauging here, because he was worse elsewhere. So because he was crap here, but he was a load of crap. It was a crap there, but a load of crap here. That's an indictment on the coaching staff. Look, he didn't have the weapons. He wasn't a good quarterback in any of his stations, and that's it. They took a shot. And again, it's not talking about the money. I know they'll have dead money next year. They'll have, I think it's $57 million. If they cut Fields in the offseason, his dead cap money, it's only $10 million in guaranteed money that he would get, but it counts, I believe, $22 million against the cap, and Aaron Rodgers is $35 against the cap. And so you essentially you'll be paying $57 million for quarterbacks you don't even have. Well, that's the way it goes. You can't blame Rodgers on this regime. That was the past regime. And they cut him loose, and it was the right move to cut him loose. I'm sorry, it was. This team was in no position. Look at the great Pittsburgh Steelers. Doesn't look so hot over there either. And now he's got a broken bone in his hand. Who knows if he's, how long he's going to be out. And with Baltimore, breathing down their necks for that division lead. And if you don't win that division, chances are in the AFC, you're not making the playoffs. So it's likely you got to win that division to make the playoffs. And Baltimore is now hard charging, which is, again, we'll get to that when we talk about the Jets-Ravens game this week. But I like the move. It did it early on. It was leaked, so who knows how Glenn's going to react to that. I haven't seen his press conference yet when I'm filming this. I'm not sure if he had it, but it's the right move. He's by far the better quarterback, and he should give the coaching staff a chance to evaluate the offensive players that they have, the skill position players from here to the rest of the season. If he even plays to the rest of the season, maybe they let Cook quarterback the last 2, 3, 4 games. See what you have with him. If he's ready, and if he's the backup, that means he's ready. If he's named the backup this week, you're telling the fans and everybody out there, because he's a play away from getting in the game, that he's ready to play. Taylor's a free agent after the season. He's likely gone. You most likely going to walk away from and cut Fields. So let's see what you have in Cook. Is he a viable backup? Is he potentially better than that? Who the heck knows? I mean, the 49ers drafted Trey Lance, third overall, but who's their starter? I got the big money, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. You never know what someone's going to be. I'm not saying Cook is going to be Brock Purdy or anything like that. Who the heck knows what he's going to be? But I think at this point, play him the last few games of the season, see what he's got, see what he's about. See, maybe he's your bridge quarterback if this 2026 class of quarterbacks coming out either don't come out, or from everything I'm hearing and reading, there's no real true stud in the group at this point. They're mentioning Mendoza, Simpson, Moore. They may all go back. None of them might come out this year. They might all go back. Now what? That's why I think the Jets loaded up there when they made those trades for 2027. That's set to be the stronger draft. Regardless if those guys come out this year or not, the 2027 draft is set to be the stronger draft. So what the Jets should continue doing is building the infrastructure around what will eventually be a young quarterback. You have a strong offensive line. Maybe you can upgrade at center. I would bring Simpson back. I would bring AVT back on a prove-it contract. Maybe then you move Tippmann back to center. Myers has been okay, but I think you could stand to upgrade there. You got Fashanu and Membu. It looks like you have your two tackles for the next decade. So you're strong there. You have Garrett Wilson, and that's it. So you need more skill. You have Breece Hall. Are you going to bring him back? Do you tag him with a transition tag, which allows other teams to offer him a contract? Do you give him a franchise tag? These things will play out, but I think the fact that they didn't move him means they intend to bring him back. So now you bring back Breece. You have Garrett, you have Mason Taylor, you have your offensive line. Keep filling out. You're going to have, even with the dead money, you'll still likely have $70 million to spend this coming off season, and then they're projected to have over $200 million the following off season. So again, you knock them if you want, but they've positioned themselves very nicely if they continue to build this team around what will eventually be a young quarterback. You drafted a young cornerback in this year's draft. You drafted a young safety. Obviously, you traded away Quinnen and Sauce, so you'll likely be looking to fill those spots. I know they brought in Saunders, who was cut from the Jaguars. They signed him, and you could see he's a big body. So you could see what they're trying to do differently. They're trying to get these big bodies up the middle, to clog the middle, to let JJ and McDonald have more free rushes, one-on-one rushes at the quarterback. You could see what they're doing. They'll need a linebacker. They're going to need. There's a lot the team needs. You're not 2-8. You don't need a lot. But I like the move to Taylor. I think Taylor will allow them to evaluate the players who have moving forward. And let's face it, this is on these two guys now. They took a shot at Fields. They missed. That was their shot. They made these trades. They freed up the money. It's there. By the time we start rolling around to 2027, not yet 2026, because there's a lot of work to be done. with this team. But make no mistake, they own it now. They own it now. You can say they already did own it before the season started, but before they made those deals and before they won any games, a lot of people, almost everybody I spoke to or everybody I heard was talking about one and done, one and done. They weren't saying who else would come in, because that's what a lot of people love to do nowadays. Let me tell you what the problem is, but I'm not going to give you a solution. But I can sure as hell bitch to high heaven as to who the problem is. Who is the solution, or what is the solution? Nobody ever said it. You didn't hear anybody suggest who would you bring in if you got rid of these guys after 1 year? Who was coming in? You didn't hear any of it. Zero. Zilch, nada, nothing, Nathan. They didn't give you a single solitary tandem that would replace these two guys. They just say, "Oh, I think they'd be one and done if they go 1-15, 1-16, 2-15." Who are you replacing it with? It was never. I never heard one person say it. So you know what? If you're not going to give me a solution, stop bitching about the problem. I think so far from what I'm seeing, since they won a couple of games and the trades were made, now you started seeing people speaking a little bit differently. They're not quitting. It looks like there's a plan. Oh, okay. So we were very quick to rush to judgment. And look, I know that's what we do as a society. It's just, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it myself every now and again, more every now instead of again. But in this case, you have no choice. And you haven't, until you get the quarterback, nothing else matters. And from what I'm seeing, everybody talking about with the upcoming draft, excuse me, I honestly don't think, unless the Jets get the number one pick and think if Mendoza comes out, unless they think, or one of the other guys comes out, Moore or Simpson, unless they think for sure that guy is the guy, he's the stud. Hey, look, I don't love the Mendoza comparison to Goff. If you're telling me that's his NFL comp, what you may be telling me is, okay, this might be a guy who gets me just so far, but he can't take me to the level I want to get to, which is a Super Bowl. I know what he did, with the Rams, but that was a loaded team. That defense was fantastic. Goff is an above-average quarterback. Looked very shaky. He looks very shaky when he's under pressure, as witnessed very recently against their last game against the Eagles, where I think at one point he was 2 for 18 in that game because they just were, relentlessly attacking him. So I'm not thrilled about that comp. Of course, it would be just total Jets luck where, okay, we might have the number one pick, and there's not a surefire stud. There's no Trevor Lawrence. There's no Andrew Luck. None of them are being talked up in that way. But they are talking about quarterbacks in 2027 that way. And the fact that one, two, or all three of the guys that are being, if you go look at all the tankathons and the mock draft sites, they all have these three quarterbacks coming out. They have Simpson, they have Moore, they have Mendoza. And they have them all going within the top 5 or 6 picks. All of them. And if all three come out, I'm sure there will be some combination of them going at least in the top 10. But if the Jets hierarchy, Muji and Glenn, do not think any of them who come out, if they come out, are the guy, and they decide, you know what we're going to do? Maybe they trade back. Maybe they have the 3rd pick or the 4th pick or the 6th pick. Who the heck knows? And they trade down. They keep accumulating picks to bring in players, to bring in talent. Maybe that's what 2026 becomes. Maybe Cook is your bridge. Possibly Mac Jones. Somebody will be different, will be quarterbacking this team in 2026. And I don't think the starting quarterback for this team in 2026 is the guy that's the franchise is going to build around. I don't think so. Not from what I'm seeing and hearing so far. So if that's what you believe, if that's what they believe, then don't just reach for a quarterback because you need a quarterback. If you don't think he's the guy, because if you draft a quarterback, sorry, you're telling us you think he's the guy. If you draft him one, two, three, obviously you're gonna have a top 10. You should have a top 10 pick. What we're seeing so far, unless you just go on a streak that nobody could predict, you'll have a top 10 pick. If you pick a quarterback that you're telling the rest of the world, your fan base, we think this is the guy. We think it's the guy. Not that you can't pick a quarterback if the one you pick this year stinks up the joint in 2027, because we've seen it done. Well, Arizona did it. They drafted Rosen, and then the next year took Kyler Murray. It's not like it doesn't happen. I mean, heck, you saw the Jets take Darnold, and a few years later take Zach Wilson. I mean, not an example of success, but it does happen. But I'm a believer of you got a lot of holes to fill, and unless you think if a quarterback comes out that you think is your guy, you identify as this is the guy we want. This is the guy we think can get us to the promised land. He's a force multiplier. He can make those around him better. Not that you need this entire infrastructure, and if he doesn't have it, you take one piece of it out, he falls apart. He tumbles. That you don't want. What you want is the guy who can elevate those around him, who can take over a game if need be. That's the guy that they need. And I don't know if any of these guys coming out is that guy, or are they that guy right now? So far from everything we're hearing, none of them are. And none of them may come out. So let the Jets continue to build. Taylor coming in, Taylor being named the starter, I think will allow them to further evaluate their pieces around the offensive pieces, the skill position players. See what you have based on all the trades you made and the moves you made in the offseason. And now that'll let you know what moves you're going to have to make once the offseason begins and the upcoming draft. That's just where we are right now as Jets fans, and unfortunately, it's all too familiar territory for us. But I think, based on what I've seen so far, I'm putting my faith in Muji and Glenn, and let's see. We'll see this all play out, and I'll be here with you guys every step of the way talking about it. As I mentioned, upcoming game against the Ravens. Right, obviously Lamar Jackson is back. The team is, starting to click with him returning. I think it's a bad spot for the Jets. Just, especially hear everybody talk about, this Jet defense is underperforming. How? Why are they? In what way are they underperforming? I think they're probably performing about what they should be. This team was not a great defensive team last year. I know you had a lot of name guys. You had Quinnen, you had Sauce, you had these guys. You had, Quincy Williams. You had the money you gave to Sherwood. You have McDonald. You have JJ. So everybody's like, this defense. That defense wasn't great last year. When you had defensive, where you had the coaching staff that was in place with this team for years, and really stunk it up once Saleh got fired. Now have they, you in the offseason, you brought in a lot of young guys. You then in season have traded two of your core pieces. So you have Brownlee, AZ Thomas is in the protocol. I don't know if he's going to be playing this week. So you traded Sauce, you traded Quinnen, you're bringing in guys, you're trying to piece this defense together. So the fact that you say they're underperforming, I don't know. I don't know what people's expectations were. As I stated numerous times, I over-evaluated where this team should be based on all the chatter that was around with this team over the last 2 years with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. I absolutely over-evaluated them and overestimated how good they were. I think they'll be competitive in this game. And that's really what you want to see from the Jet team moving forward. is be competitive. Don't get rolled over in these games. You got rolled over in the Buffalo game earlier this year, and it just looked ugly. Hopefully, Taylor can play competent starting NFL quarterback, give you competent starting NFL quarterback play. I think that I don't think they'll lose this game. I think obviously it means a lot more to Baltimore than it does to the Jets. But I think the Jets, as they showed you against New England, I think they'll be competitive. And look, the Jets beat a Cleveland team that gave Baltimore everything they wanted. They gave Baltimore everything. I know the Jets had the 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, but scored 13 points outside of that. This game was, if Dylan Gabriel, who not like he was lighting it up, but Shador just did not play well when he came in. And that's been all over the news, how he was pretty much set up to fail. And from what I'm hearing, I agree. But it's not like Baltimore rolled over Cleveland. That was a tough game. I think that it'll be a competitive game. I think the Jets will keep this game competitive, especially with Taylor at quarterback. But ultimately, it's just you're looking at most of the teams they'll be going up against from here on out, except for maybe the Saints and the Dolphins. There's just too much firepower, and the Dolphins have looked good since they fired the GM. These teams have too much firepower. You have Lamar Jackson, you have Derrick Henry, you have Mark Andrews, you have Zay Flowers. There's a lot of firepower, especially for a defense now it's in flux. It's in flux. You're getting guys. It looks like you're playing a little bit different of a defense with the bigger guys up front, as I mentioned earlier, the big D tackles up front. Who knows how? They got Saunders. I don't know if he's going to play this week. I don't know if AZ is going to be back this week. I think Arian Smith may be unlocked a little bit this week on the offensive side. I'm not one of the guys who watches the all 22s. There are a few people out there who do that, who I follow. And from what they're telling me, the all 22s essentially, for anybody who's listening and doesn't know what that is, where we're watching a game, we're just kind of seeing what's shown to you on the screen. The all 22, you're seeing everybody on the field. So you're seeing the entire field at once. And what they're saying is there's plenty of times Arian Smith is running wide open on plays, and Fields is just not confident enough or competent enough to take advantage of it. So maybe Taylor unlocks Smith a little bit. We see A.D. Mitchell, while he did have the drops against New England, he did beat Christian Gonzalez, who's a Pro Bowl player. He beat him a couple of times. On that deep pass, he beat him. Straight up beat him a couple. And on he showed, okay, catch the damn ball. It's not, you can't just say, oh, I beat him off the line or I got open. No, you got to catch it. At the end of the day, that's what you're paid to do. Not beat the guy off the line or, oh, look, I was open, but I dropped it. You can say that. And he owned it. After the game, he owned it. He said, because I got to look at me. It was on me. I like that. He didn't blame, oh, I just got here. I didn't play a lot. I don't have a lot of reps this year. He said none of that. He owned it, which showed me a lot. So now we'll see. I just think Baltimore, there's too much firepower. They have too much at stake. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets beat anybody from here on out. I really wouldn't. If Taylor's quarterbacking, I wouldn't be surprised because they're going to be if they play with the same fight that they've been playing with and get more competent play from the quarterback, they'll be in games. They'll be in enough games, and their special teams has been, I believe they're the best unit in the NFL. If not, they're one of the top 3 units in the entire NFL. So give Banjo his due. So everybody's trying to look around and say, the one guy who I think is gone after this season is Wilkes, the defensive coordinator. And a lot of people agreed with the fact that, yes, it was a hire that people were looking at because he was a veteran coach, prior head coaching experience, could be a sounding board for Glenn, and maybe that's what he is. But as a defensive coordinator, the fact that he continues to play in man coverage they just continuously get beat on crossing routes, and they don't it just, and you don't adjust to it at all, speaks volumes. And if you just look at his resume, it's a lot of one and dones. And he wasn't even in the league last year. So I think he's gone after that, unless this defense miraculously turns it around and just looks like a top 10 unit the rest of the season. I think he's the guy who goes. I know a lot of people have been pointing again the Detroit, New York, comparisons. That's what Dan Campbell did. First year head coach after the first season, fired Anthony Lynn, brings in Ben Johnson. We all know how that turned out for the offense, and now Ben Johnson being successful with the Bears. I think Wilkes, if this defense continues on the path they've been so far, I believe he'll be done after the end of the season. I have no idea who they'll be bringing in. Those names haven't yet materialized as to who would be a potential replacement if he is fired. That's just my opinion. I think he is going to be let go if this defense, because I think Engstrand, I like what I see so far. I think they'll want to run it back with him. I think Wilkes, and I don't know if he was even hired for that. Who knows? Did Glenn tell him, look, man, I'm going to bring you in. This thing might not look good. If it doesn't look good by the end of the season, you'll be out of here. Who the heck knows, what was discussed. But I do think Wilkes is gone at the end of the season. I don't think they'll win this week. I just think they're the team in flux. The Raven team is now coming together. They got their MVP quarterback back. They're pushing and charging to take over that division. I think it's just too much for the Jets to overcome. But as I said a second ago, if they win this game or any game from here on out, it would not surprise me. The fashion in which they win a game may surprise me, but if they win a game, if they beat any of their remaining opponents, I would not be surprised. And I will be here after, when the game is, after the Jet Raven game. I'll, as always, give my feedback on that, and then continue talking about news and notes and what's to come for the rest of the season, and start already talking about what's going to be going on in the off season. But I thank everybody for liking and subscribing. This is a lot of fun. It's also therapeutic. Hopefully it is for you guys as well. Keep leaving the comments. I love the banter, and I will see you guys after the upcoming Jets-Ravens game. Until then, take care.